Ethan, Zana, Maddie, and Kaylee were four friends living together in an off-campus house at the University of Idaho. They worked hard and were all flourishing as students and having the time of their lives. They were popular, and their house was known as a gathering spot for fellow students. All of that tragically changed in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. Those four students were stabbed to death inside of their own home. The brutal crime shook the community and touched the nation, setting off an intense manhunt for a killer. Students were afraid to be alone on campus. Some never came back. Investigators from the Moscow Police Department joined forces with the Idaho State Police and the FBI, following every lead, every tip, and every piece of evidence. That investigation took them across the country to Pennsylvania and led them to this man, a grad student at a neighboring university in Pullman, Washington. This accused mass killer has denied the allegations and is awaiting trial. Today, Bryan Kohberger and his attorneys were back in court to argue that his upcoming trial should be moved from Latah County. Good evening and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott, in tonight for Vinnie Politan. We begin tonight in Moscow, Idaho, where accused quadruple murderer Bryan Kohberger was in court today for a change of venue motion hearing. Now, as of now, the trial is set to be held in Latah County, where the town of Moscow and the University of Idaho are located. And it is where this horrible tragedy took place. The defense has argued that the media coverage of the case in Latah County has created a mob mentality and that the residents feel a certain pressure to convict their client. In the defense's motion, they included quotes from some of Latah County residents they surveyed when asked what would happen if Bryan Kohberger was not convicted. Listen to how some of those residents responded. First quote, "They'd burn the courthouse down. Outrage would be a mild description. They would probably find him and kill him." Here's another one. "There would likely be a riot and he wouldn't last long outside because someone would do the good old boy justice." Enraged, strong opinions, firing of officers. And finally, riots. Parents would take care of him. So the question is, will the trial be moved to Ada County, which is more than 300 miles away, where the defense says there's been significantly less media coverage? Judge John Judge will be ruling on that based on what he heard in today's hearing.
We've been primarily asked to look at the, without even being hyperbolic, let's say, an extreme amount of media coverage, its impact on a population or a community, and a statistical volume of that media exposure on various communities across the U.S., but focused on several counties within. Yes, a person in Latah County would be exposed to far more media coverage than people, a community in Ada County.
Based on the data that you're seeing, is this story waning in the news?
No. In fact, if we could make one more line on any of these media coverage over time charts, you would see an upslope on the first one, this chart. So you already see it ticking up when I compare Latah to Ada. If we could bring that chart forward to today, you would see that going up, and that will be consistent anytime this case has significant news or a significant hearing in Latah and Ada County. It will be of interest, and I would say that the delta or the difference between Latah and Ada County will continue to be statistically similar. It will probably potentially always be of greater interest in Latah County than in Ada County.
So fair to say for that first 6 months, Ada County did have, at times, fairly significantly more media coverage than Latah County.
Correct.
So my role was to evaluate how publicity about a case could shape potential jurors when they come in and sit on a panel. What we found in research over many, many years, decades, is that if somebody has any kind of indicator of authority, even if it's something as minor as height, but certainly, an occupational status, title, that people will take their words so far that they'll do things to contradict their own morals, and they'll be influenced in areas beyond the person's expertise, like a doctor influencing you in your relationships or something that's totally irrelevant. And so we take it a little bit too far. And in the case of Moscow and Latah County, it's a really small community, right? And so the authority figures are often going to be people who are known and well trusted. And, so that makes this effect even potentially more problematic. And, as you know, Chief Fry, the chief of the police at the time, had said that he was certain that he arrested the right suspect and he didn't have any doubts. And so the community would say, okay, well, the chief of police is sure, so then I can be sure too.
There's a lot of pictures of Mr. Kohberger in the media. Do you mean that when we walk into trial and the room's full of potential jurors, there's going to be a great majority of them that before we sit down are going to have a feeling of bias against Mr. Kohberger?
Yeah, I do. And you've seen the pictures, these ominous headlines, and that connection can't help but be made.
Based on your years of teaching human bias and your extensive study of human bias, do you have an opinion about whether the extensive pretrial publicity has impacted the Latah County jury pool?
I do. I think it would be so hard to be a member of that community and be able to come in and be objective, arguably impossible. So we don't have a known method for undoing things, and the things have been done. They've felt the emotions, they've seen the publicity, they've had the discussions, they've been to the vigils, and even if they want to be as objective as possible, and even if we disregard some of the limitations I talked about before, research has not uncovered a way to undo this after it's there. And so the recommended best practice by the vast majority of researchers on this topic is find people who don't have that information.
So I completed the survey in Latah County and then conducted several comparison surveys after that hearing in Ada County, Gannett County, and Canyon County. This is really looking at what people are seeing on social media and through informal communication networks. And the reason I did that is because it's a small county, and in small counties, people talk. So people are more likely to know, rumors and speculation because people know the victims, they know the defendant, or someone's worked with somebody who knows the defendant or victim. So from my experience, you have a lot of information disseminated through informal communication channels and through social media in high profile cases.
Did you find that in this case?
I did. There was quite a bit.
What are we seeing on this slide?
So this is just an example. I went on Facebook and just did one search, which was just the search term was Moscow murders to see what would come up. And this is what we would call a results page, essentially. So if you hit play, you can see the extent of content that's out there from groups that are just talking about this case and sharing information and discussing what they think happened, and videos and posts, which may include anything from influencers and podcasters to sharing traditional news stories through, local newspapers or television stories. But there's quite a bit. And again, this is just one search.
Joining us now to help break all this down, founder of the Crime Scene Collective, Alinaa Smith. Alinaa, thank you so much for being with me tonight. Let me ask you this, because by virtue of your really being in place to assist families in these kinds of circumstances, I know that you've worked with the family, and one of the sisters been in contact with them. You really have your ear to the ground. Tell us a little bit about what kind of talk is going on around this whole changing venue and moving this trial.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, this has been a highly anticipated hearing today, and we've just been waiting to see. Obviously, we were all hoping there would be a decision today. This hearing being over 7 hours was clearly a surprise. Some were even talking about it maybe going into day 2. Honestly, like, the biggest thing the takeaway is that, they're saying that in these other counties like Boise or bringing it to Ada County for Boise, right now, maybe they're not talking about it, but, once they decide to move it there, I guarantee you, give it 6 months plus time, they are going to start talking about it, just like they talk about it in Idaho County right now, or how they perceive that everybody's talking about it right now. I don't know why they kind of had this idea that, it's not being discussed over there, but it is. Once it's moved, trust me, everybody's going to be discussing it the same, because now the whole county is going to anticipate this whole huge trial, this nationwide trial is going to be moved into their county. Everybody's going to be discussing it. And why don't they think that the jury is going to be kind of, then discussing it, or that it's going to be kind of how they're saying that's going to be, whatever their word is, I can't think of it right now, but you know what I mean? Like, they're going to be, I can't think of it, but you know what I mean?
No,
like, they're going to be just,
biased,
swayed.
Right, biased, exactly. No, I do
Biased,
understand what
yeah,
you mean.
I'm so sorry.
Right, no,
Yeah,
that's
biased,
okay.
right.
There's so much going on.
think
7
that
hours of a hearing you've been following. It's a lot of information.
Right.
But that's the standard. The defense would have to have proven through those witnesses today that there's a reasonable likelihood that that pretrial publicity has created a bias or an effect on partiality. And that's what the defense was arguing. But to your point, one of the witnesses on direct examination said, right now in Idaho County, there would be far more who were exposed to media coverage, right? Which makes sense. But on cross-examination, the state brought out something you just alluded to, which was, well, in the first 6 months, Ada County was more significantly exposed to media coverage. So it can change depending on what's going on in the county. And if it goes from one county to another county, you're right, then the media is there,
Yeah.
people start paying attention. So I certainly,
Right.
yeah, I understand what you're saying about that. But I also think part of the concern around all of this is the small community where this occurred, the outrage, the heartbreak, the horror, the fear, all of those things that fairly exist in what used to be safe, nurturing, I can't think of another best word, but a community where people felt safe, and now that's shattered.
I mean, yes, I agree with that, but so is Ada County. I mean, that's a safe county as well, and now they're bringing this huge trial to this county and are going to bring this negativity and this temperament over there to where the media, this media frenzy, and everybody's going to be moved there. I mean, why don't they think the same kind of, the same people are going to be moved to that area? Why don't they think the same media, the same, they're worried about the social media aspect. The same crowd is just going to carry themselves over. I mean, I was in Moscow for the demolition, and I was interviewed by a few of the TV channels. It wasn't anybody locally. It was everybody from Boise. Nobody else wanted to talk about it. It was all other counties and other towns that wanted to discuss it. It wasn't anybody in Lada or in Moscow. I mean, everybody, other people are discussing it, and other people want to know. And this, as we all know, this is not just nationwide, this is worldwide. I ran a huge Facebook group with almost 250,000 members that I was, I'm no longer doing that, but I had members on there from Scotland, from Poland, from Russia, from China. I mean, everywhere. And I had the stats of where each person, the majority of the members were from. And Idaho was not the main component of what made that group. It was everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So I really think the perception of who's really going to be paying attention is not just Lada. It's everywhere. Yeah, everywhere. Everybody is.
The world is paying attention to this case. And let's be honest, if you read about this case and look at what law enforcement has said about this case, you hear what the evidence is expected to be. And I think a lot of people look at that and say, he's guilty. He did this, period. Well, there is a presumption of innocence. At the end of the day, it's all about our system requiring a fair and impartial jury. How do you think it's going to be finding in either county a fair and impartial jury, given the horrific nature of a serial killer and the details of the crimes, if in fact he did it?
I think it's still possible. I think it's, they're going to have to poll a lot of jurors, bring in they said at one point, I think, 1,800 or so. And like they did for, I believe it was the Daybell trial, it's going to take a lot of extra work, a lot of extra legwork. It's going to happen. They're going to have to put the extra effort in because of the coverage that this case received. But I think it's very, very possible. I mean, why can't they bust jurors in? Didn't they do something like that for the Casey Anthony trial? I know they sequestered them, but wasn't there something where they bust the jurors in? There are different ways that they can, kind of minimize the exposure that these jurors receive. But at the end of the day, people just know about it. And I think what they're going to have to ask is the extent of their knowledge, and basing it on this whole, social media and this and that. Social media is just what our world is about right now. And whether it be this case or another case, people just find their information and get their news from social media. And unfortunately, during this case, social media plays a huge role, because social media plays a role in all of our lives in a very large way. And it's unfortunate that they're using that as a reason to kind of move this out of the area that the families and everybody else, as the prosecution was explaining. Let's think about the logistics of this and the costs and the witnesses and the families. This displaces everybody. Even the judge would have to, displace himself from his family for over 3 months. Like, is he prepared for this? Is his family prepared? What are the costs that are going to be incurred during this? There's just so many different elements to it that, I don't think everybody's kind of thinking about, and it needs to be all discussed. It really does.
It does. And Alinaa,
I feel terrible for the family.
I feel terrible for the family, but I have to say thank you for pointing out. I was on the bench, and at that time, people didn't realize that it cost the county, that it cost the taxpayers anytime you had to change venue because of what you just said. You've got the prosecutors, you've got the county employees, you've got the law enforcement that has to travel to testify, you've got the judge. All those expenses have to be covered, and so it is no small cost to actually change venue. One last thing, just quickly, I understand these two are about 5 hours apart. So it's not as if it's 30 minutes down the road, jump in the car and go to court. It's actually far enough away that people would probably just have to relocate during that time.
Absolutely. And it's during, the summertime. Like I personally don't know, everybody's personal, familial, situations, but I imagine everybody has a family. Summertime is when you want to spend time with your children. Some are going off to college. Some are starting new, events in their life. But now this just puts them in a whole, 5 hours away, and how that works on your psyche, as no matter what your position is in this trial. And you don't want to have that as a reason to why things didn't go the way that either the prosecution or the defense wanted. Well, are they going to say, well, the judge was stressed out, or this lawyer was stressed out, or that lawyer, because they had to be here and they had to, leave for this reason because they had to be home. There's just so many different, areas where there could be an error for those family reasons even, why are they just messing with, they don't want an appeal, but yet they're kind of pushing for reasons for appeal here on other premises.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack with this. Thank you for your assistance that you give to families of victims, and for joining us today, our guest, Alinaa Smith. When we come back, the think tank will be joining me to talk about today's hearing in the Bryan Kohberger case. Plus, here's a preview of what's coming up in the next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, newly released court documents reveal Madeline Soto's cause of death and more details about the state of her body when it was found.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan.
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least two sides to it.
To dive into the latest.
Oh my God.
And breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside.
I've never seen that in Discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years.
And outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central. Only on Court TV.
Yeah, the whole thing is really strange. I grew up in Moscow, and this sort of thing doesn't really happen that often in this area.
I think of North Idaho as a pretty off-the-map type of place, pretty safe place, very family-friendly, and to have 4 murders and then the guys just running around on the loose is a little unnerving.
Everyone's on edge, quiet and stuff. You don't see everyone as talkative, like chatty, as like social as they used to be and stuff when we go out.
I got a text from my mom, and she said, "Hey, you're in Steptoe Apartments. Look outside your door." And I looked right outside, and I saw the crime tape, and I saw the unmarked police vehicles, people going in to do the crime scene search, and I was just flabbergasted that he lived right there.
Those were some University of Idaho students in Moscow sharing their thoughts after the brutal murders of 4 of their peers in November of 2022. Now the defense for the accused killer, they want to change a venue. Today at a motions hearing, they called expert witnesses to testify about the impact the media coverage of the case has had on the residents of Latah County. One of their witnesses this afternoon was jury consultant Bryan Kohberger.
What really stood out to me was this shattering our sense of innocence, right? This is an innocent town and no crimes or horrible things ever happened here. And this guy took it away from us. We had this idyllic, safe community, and this person destroyed it. This crime destroyed it. And they talk about people, they never locked their cars before, their homes. I think one person said, he didn't even have a house to his key when he bought it, or a key to his house. That makes more sense. And suddenly people are locking doors because they're fearful. One of the things I wanted to look at, because it's a small community and people know everyone, and the pressure when coming in and out of this courthouse on a day-to-day basis, when it's been inundated with journalists, and my guess is people can figure out who's on the jury by who's not picking their kids up at school and talking to neighbors and all that. Is there pressure? Do the jurors ever feel pressure that there has to be a certain outcome? How would the community react if he's not convicted, if he's found not guilty? And there was quite a bit of strong comments on a range of themes, from people would basically kill him, to they'd burn the courthouse down, or assume that the jury failed, or that he would have to prove that he was not guilty. Again, shifting the burden. So it's I can't imagine that happening because they have so much evidence against him. We would be dumbfounded. How could he not be guilty given the amount of evidence? Several would be on the hunt for him to make sure he gets what's coming to him. And then just emotional stuff about it would be devastating to the community. Other people talked about the fear if he didn't do it, well, who did? That means this person's still among us, who creates the same stress and fear and anxiety that people had before. I think that the presumption of innocence has been undermined and a presumption of guilt prevails in this community. And I think the pre-existing attitudes and opinions will influence how people process evidence. So even if the same information is presented at trial, there's a big difference in terms of jurors being exposed to that for the first time. I don't know about the DNA evidence. I don't know about the videos, versus a juror being exposed to something that they already know, where they're just confirming what they already know. I already know about the DNA evidence. It's just triggering a memory of what I already recall. And I'm processing this information through that filter of it's consistent with what I believe and I already know. And it impacts how they see government witnesses and how they will view and evaluate defense witnesses. And I don't think voir dire is an effective remedy, given the research I've done, my experience doing jury selections, and the nature of how memory works. So taking all that combined, I think it's appropriate to change that.
And now it is time to bring in our think tank. The lawyer who represented Johnny Depp, trial attorney Benjamin Chu, criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy, and former criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi. Thank you all for joining us as we talk about this motion for a change of venue. First of all, Eklund, in these highly publicized cases, many of which we cover, most of which we cover here at Court TV, I think a change of venue is pretty standard, typical fare on behalf of a defense attorney. Would you agree with that or not?
I agree, especially with facts. In this case, it was necessary. The issue with this particular case is that you're looking, the community is making the defendant synonymous with being unsafe. And that is you've already lost the trial there. There is no reasonable, even with the comments and everything, I remember that there were in the community that they wanted to demolish the house. because they were so ready to get back to normal. So in a community that is so ready to get back to normal, you are already kind of lost the trial because you're trying to tell them, hey, look at other evidence. There's a possibility. The burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. So if you have a community who's already just traumatized by it, I think that the change of venue would be just holistically better for the community. I think that they should use the time to do maybe therapeutic services for all the students that are there, for everybody involved. But the idea of having a trial there and you're having the defendant being synonymous with ripping away the sanctity of your community, you're not going to have a fair trial. It's almost impossible.
Wow. I hadn't really looked at it in terms of the association they're making between the defendant and unsafe community. Ben, let me ask you this, if I could, please. This defendant really is famous for the alleged murder of 4 students. But if it's moved to another county, isn't it arguable that, well, he's going to become famous there too if he isn't already, so another county won't make a difference?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Eklund makes some outstanding points, but I think the great Joe Louis had it right. He can run, but he can't hide. I think he goes to another county. He's still infamous there. These crimes are heinous, and I just don't think it will avail him, even if he gets moved to another county.
And did you hear, Kirk, some of the quotes we were reading earlier when people were asked in Latah County about this, that some of them said they'd burn the courthouse down. Outrage would be a mild description. They would probably find him and kill him. I mean, the anger, the rage, understandable, all of it. But that does paint a picture of a community that's broken. And can you find 12 jurors that are fair and impartial with alternates when you have that type of, again, not saying it's not appropriate, but that kind of sentiment because of the killings?
Well, Ashley, I think the way we need to look at this is not just the guilt or innocence phase, but remember, this is a death penalty case. So we're talking about whether or not a juror can deliver their moral belief on whether Mr. Kohberger should be sentenced to life or death. And I think the concern that those comments raise in that regard is very telling. We saw it in the Karen Reed trial, right? Small courthouse, protesters, jurors can be identified. And that becomes concerning when we talk about that penalty phase. And while Ben is right when he speaks about the notoriety, the saturation of media is really what we're talking about here. We're not talking about social media. We're not talking about anything else. We're talking about news reports, things of that nature. And experts can discern the difference in the saturation of that media market, but also when we talk about concerns for safety that Eklund brought. I mean, if Bryan Kohberger is the poster child for an unsafe Latah County, University of Idaho area, I went to school 8 miles from there at Washington State University. I understand exactly what she's talking about. But when we talk about it in that context, we really have to think about, okay, it might be inconvenient and costly to move the trial, but the 6th and 8th Amendment don't have a cost-benefit analysis worked into them. And likewise, this is something that's going to go up on appeal for 10 or 15 years when they look at this case. So to move it to somewhere where jurors do not feel threatened, what happens after the trial? If a juror says, I feel threatened to vote death and I didn't want to, then we've got a whole new trial. Then we've got a whole new animal. So it's penny wise and pound foolish not to move this trial.
And that's what I think as a former judge about is the appeal, right? If he's convicted, if he gets the death penalty, absolutely there will be an appeal. And even if those things don't happen and there's a conviction, there might be an appeal. And if there's an appeal, as a judge, sometimes you want to take the path that means that it's not an appellate issue. So isn't Eklund let me ask you actually, Ben, about, isn't it the safer route to take to say, okay, because of that, we're going to go ahead and move it, and then that takes that issue off the table?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and Eklund, how do If you're in that community and if you want a public hearing, they can go watch, they can watch on TV as well. But if they want to go physically and watch it, is there an anger about the fact that then it's 5+ hours away to drive there, to get there, to actually be there for this trial? Does that take away an opportunity for that community to have a the right to have a public hearing?
I think the community has been very loud in stating that they want to separate themselves as much as possible from this heinous act. And the problem is that the community really can't heal when they just believe that this one person is the cause of these 4 murders. And the issue is you're not only having the trial there, you're not only putting the defendant at risk, but also potential jurors for juror intimidation because they live in the town. If they're already flaming up social media right now and there hasn't been a trial, Lord knows what happens to the actual jurors. The victims in this case were very, very popular. They were very loved. This community is aching still. So I think having the trial there is just it doesn't matter how much it costs. It's just not just. And we're here for justice. In order for the families to get what they need, we need to find the person or the people that committed this murder. And we just need to be able to do that in a safe space. I think that's well for everybody.
What do you think, Ben, about this statistic that came out? And that is that they say 40% of the residents of the community have actually walked by or visited the place where these murders occurred. Does that mean anything to you when you're thinking about, I'm going to have to pick a jury if it stays here?
Yeah, that's a significant. This sounds like a very tiny county, and that's a very significant statistic.
Yeah,
and I think one the judge will carefully consider.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize, but I agree with you. That number was higher than I might have expected.